Why do some Americans say we was e.g. we was laughing, or we was talking instead of we were talking, or we were laughing? The use of we was instead of we were is a common feature in some dialects and regional speech patterns in the US. It's particularly seen in African American vernacular English of and in some other regional dialects as well. This is not an exclusively American thing. There are regions of the UK that use similar phrasing. It's used in the UK as well, particularly associated with the West Country and some parts of the Midlands. Now there are loads of people from that region who certainly don't speak like that, but it's more of a stereotype, I guess, i.e. rugged farmer speak. My dad's from Exeter, and his mother would correct him if he ever came home speaking like his schoolmates, so he's never had that dialect, but he's very good at imitating it. Anyway, not sure if this way of speaking was transported to the States during colonization, especially considering those with that dialect were also known for seafaring or being the archetypal pirates, as it were, or if it developed separately. Would be interesting to look into. Not just Americans. Some British folks say it as well. Alright, me old China, let's have a butcher's at why some Yanks say we was instead of we were, shall we? It's all about how language evolves, innit? So grab your best whistle and flute and let me Spain you the tail sauce you don Barnaby Rudge am I? See, in some places across the pond, the locals been having a bit of a bubble bath with the Queen's English. It's a bit of linguistic pie and mash, where folks stick with what rolls off the tongue like syrup of figs. We was is easier to use, like going down the apples and pears instead of tacking the long way round. Now, some of it might be down to their Barnet Fair regional accents and dialects, see? It's all about being comfy with their local patter, no need for posh grammar. It's not wrong, just different, like swapping your loaf of bread for your mince pies in a pinch. There's an interesting history here. The southern vernacular accent, presumably what you were referring to, is likely stuck in a bit of a time capsule, as many of those communities were established long before a national highway system and were very remote, and remained very remote, much longer than other areas of the United States. There is evidence that speaks to a southern accent being more closely related in dialect to how English settlers would have spoken 400-200 years ago. Now you add in the Atlantic slave trade. Black slaves were not given any formal education in English obviously, so their best bet was mimicking code switching to how the master spoke. Their African dialects mixed a bit with the English they were informally taught, thus of. A similar metamorphosis occurred with French in the Caribbean. Basically African Pidgin SP, mixing with the original language to create its own hybrid language. Both the original Southern drawl and the OV are now looked down upon because of their association with post-Reconstruction poverty and, of course, in the case of OV, its association with blackness. All of this to say, all those in the comments calling people uneducated or being racist, you're a little cunt. As a linguistics professor, I find this fascinating. It's actually called vernacular dialect, and it's equally valid as standard English. Language evolves based on community usage, and we has become standard in some social groups. Pretty cool how language adapts like that. It's dialectical usage. I also hear you as. For some reason, people in this area have trouble with saw. I seen that. I saw it. People don't really realize how many dialectical regional variations there are here. Children adopt the language patterns of their parents, peers, and community. There's a vast expanse of living and constantly evolving language outside of textbooks. Happens in the UK too. Common in some English dialects too. These sorts of differences aren't unique to some American subcultures. There are similar changes in the Yorkshire England dialects : n.wikipedia.org Wiki Yorkshire dialect prof equals SFTI1 vocabulary and grammar. Scroll down to the bullet item beginning with where can be used in place of was. Poor grammar. It's a quirk in some dialects. Speaking this way is like the American version of a Cockney accent. Similar associations. Not wealthy, not classically educated, the opposite of a posh accent. Except here it's got a lot of associations with the rural South too. Most Americans use singular verbs with collective nouns. For example, the committee is talking. Most of us switch to plural if we use the plural pronoun, even if we are still referring to something collectively they are talking, but a significant minority keep the singular verb, they is talking. It sounds equally weird to a lot of Americans to hear people from other countries say, the committee are talking. Because that's the way the people around them say it and have said it their whole lives. It would sound weird to them for someone to say we were. Poor grammar. Because they lazy or dumb. So I says to Mabel, I says, if it's in America, it's likely because of our failed public education system. Just slang. Same in UK, we swap and miss out words and pronunciation.